Hello, my friend. You're in for a treat. This is Existential Courage, according to Søren Kierkegaard. Kierkegaard, the Danish philosopher of the beginning of the 19th century, who did not want to create another philosophical system like Hegel had done, Hegel who he loathed, but who wanted to get us back to doing things in a more intense, passionate, inward, real, truthful manner instead. He believed that any truth has to be lived for it to be real. And that in itself is a form of existential courage. So for Kierkegaard, often called the father of existential thought, existential courage is the courage to face yourself in the presence of the infinite. It is the willingness to endure what he called the dizziness of freedom, and to make a radical and very personal and individual commitment in the face of absolute objective uncertainty. And he looked at this through various stages of life. So it all starts for Kierkegaard with this concept of anxiety he wrote about, and which he called the dizziness of freedom, because that anxiety is like standing at the edge of a cliff, he said. You feel the dread of falling, and yet you also feel the attraction of the abyss, and you are fighting your desire to step into it. So it is a paradoxical experience. And to come to terms with this anxiety is about accepting and realizing your own radical possibility, and to be aware that your own radical possibility always encloses the possibility of your annihilation, of your becoming nothing, of you being destroyed, of you no longer existing. So when you feel this anxiety and this possibility of all possibilities, many people will want to flee from it, flee from the dizziness, flee from the challenge. The coward, Kierkegaard says, runs back to the safety of the crowd, to conformity, to routine, because it helps you to stay aligned with what the world expects, and that keeps you safe from anxiety. But the courageous person, Kierkegaard says, stands on the precipice, accepts the anxiety, and uses it to school their soul into maturity, my friend. And we do this at 3 different levels. Life is a journey through 3 stages, according to Kierkegaard. And the first stage, where we try to become existentially brave and courageous, is the aesthetic stage, where we try to be in the moment and chase sensory pleasure, have intellectual stimulation, enlightenment, avoid being just like others, avoid being bored. But we don't make any commitments, because we are not quite ready to make a real commitment to courage and to face the burden of selfhood. We allow ourselves to be distracted, and you will see how Heidegger borrowed this idea of hiding in the crowd and distracting ourselves from anxiety. And like Kierkegaard, he hated people doing that. So for Kierkegaard, it only really starts with existential courage at the second stage, the ethical stage, because now you move out of this distraction and this enjoyment and this stimulation, and you face the courage to become yourself as an ethical being. So now you will make commitments and you will accept duties. You might marry, you take a job, you earn your living, you take responsibility for your role in society. This is an act of courage, he says, because you have to give up on your non-committal freedom and your aesthetic enjoyment. You're anchoring yourself to a lasting social reality. But this remains unsatisfactory. It is not sufficient because it still settles you into something human. What he wants for you to have true existential courage is that you step up to the religious stage. This for him is the pinnacle of the architecture of courage, because now you step out of the comfort of pleasure and of universal societal ethics, and you stand alone before the universe, before the infinite, before the absolute, before God, as he would say. And now you have a choice whether you handle challenges through becoming the knight of faith or the knight of infinite resignation. So the knight of infinite resignation is the person who has the courage to give up everything they love for a higher principle, like becoming a tragic hero, dying for your country or for love. It is an act of will, it is an act of courage, but it remains within a definition of a human task. The knight of faith defines him or herself in a more radical way as somebody who seeks to perform the leap of faith. The leap of faith that life makes sense, that the absolute has a lawful reality that we can leap into the paradox, leap into the paradox of the absolute. So if we cannot do that, Kierkegaard believes, we are doomed to feel despair and never fully become ourselves, because the leap of faith is the expression of existential courage. It's never blind, it's never thoughtless. It is a passion born after you have realized how meaningless life might seem, and what the abyss looks like, and what the limits of human reason are. This is the courage to hold on to your subjective truth and the discovery of what you feel when you allow the intensity of your entire being, precisely because it is so hard to do. You claim your subjectivity, not against objective facts, but alongside the objective facts, rather like in phenomenology. And you have the courage to hold on to that paradox, to that confrontation with difficulty and absurdity, and to create an inward, authentic relationship with existence, where you stand at the precipice without escaping into that distraction, to choose to confront the despair to find your true selfhood, and to commit to this subjective truth despite objective uncertainty. It is about having the stamina to stand alone before the infinite. There is no bravado about this. It is something that is entirely inward. It is a wrestling match with the mystery of existence. The bravery to look into the mirror of your soul and feel the weight of eternal responsibility, and then make the leap into authentic being. I hope, my friend, you find something to inspire you in Kierkegaard's words, and that you might go find him and read some Kierkegaard for yourself, because it's very strong stuff. Not easy to read, quite religious sounding, but he points towards something well beyond dogma or established sectarian forms of any kind of religion. Take care, my friend. Wishing you much existential courage.